there's this shift that has happened where as a creative, you have to show them and prove to them the value of your work, like from an ROI perspective, which obviously makes sense as a client. But at the same time, it just puts a creative, especially a solo creative that's, not an agency, they're more of a production company, in a really weird position because, that's just not something that we can really do, right?
Welcome to another episode of The Profitable Creative, the only place on the interwebs where you will learn how to turn your passion into profit. I am your host, Christian Brim. Special shout out to our one listener in Knox, Indiana. Thank you for listening. Joining me today, Makayla Wheeler, cinematographer, director of photography. Makayla, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I was just saying in the green room that I was just down in Florida in Sarasota, which is where you live. But you're in Tampa?
No, I'm on the East Coast. So I'm on the East Coast in Melbourne, Florida. So near where the rocket launches are.
Yes. Okay. Well, I was down there for this. This is an unsolicited plug for this event. It's called the Unconference, and Vincent Puglisi, who lives there in the Tampa area, this is the second year they've put it on, but it's essentially a gathering of creatives that he put together. He was a commercial photographer. And then he went into coaching, and then it kind of led to this event. And the concept is there's no speakers, there's no sponsors. Get 100 creatives in the room and have little roundtable discussions for a couple of days, or go have your own conversation. But it was fascinating meeting all of these different creatives that did wildly different things. Some marketers, some cinematographers, some authors, publishers, just some fascinating conversations. In any case, the Unconference is happening again next year. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
So, Makayla, you are a cinematographer, but you also have a production company. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have been running a small boutique production company. I actually started up in high school. My parents were very supportive. I started it in high school as an LLC and then went full-time with it in 2018 and was kind of doing more like local projects and working with a wide range of clientele, as well as I worked on a 3-year documentary project. And I've done that since 2018. So that would be about 8 years. And then I would say in the past year or so, I really wanted to kind of transition more deeply into cinematography and directing as myself, as Makayla, and not so much running and managing a business and a production company. And so I ended up working with a coach who's a friend of a friend in the industry. He's a director and photographer who kind of went through the same journey of like, do I want to produce and manage a production company and all the things? Or, do I want to market myself more as, the artist, the creative who's delving deeper into cinematography and directing? And then, you're working more with other production companies, other agencies, sometimes directly with clients. It just depends. But two kind of slightly different tracks a bit. And after some self-reflection, I really decided I kind of wanted to pursue more of the path of branding myself like Makayla as a cinematographer and sometimes documentary director.
I love that. I recently had a client of Core's on the show, John Morgan with Rival Studios, and he's a little further along in the journey, but it was a similar path to begin with, where you start out and you're kind of like trying to figure out what you want to do, and you start out doing everything. And he actually started out doing like marketing websites and videos, so even more wide. And then he realized, well, like I can't be good at everything. So what am I best at? And so he transitioned to exclusively videography.
Yeah.
And then he was like, the next step was, okay, who am I going to, what industry am I going to specialize in? And he ended up doing sports videography, and ended up now his clients are exclusively like NFL, NHL, top tier universities doing promotional video, hype video, that all that stuff to supplement their in-house videography teams.
Yeah.
But the common thread, and it sounds like the thread for you is like what actually lights your fire. Like what is it that you really enjoy doing as opposed to having to do all this other stuff that you don't really enjoy doing?
Totally. Yes. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, because there are a lot of moving parts, right? I mean, like you don't.
Yep.
In our business, there's a lot of different elements of things like bookkeeping and taxes and payroll and wealth management, and it's like, do you want to do all of those components, or do you want to manage others that do that? Do you envision recreating a production company where you're still focusing on the cinematography and directing, and having an in-house crew, or a dedicated, maybe not employees, but like a dedicated crew that you work with, or no, just staying with the consulting?
Well, I'm not consulting per se, but I will say I do, the way that I kind of restructured my rebrand is I have a tab on my website of like, hey, I can still do full service production, right? And, the way that I've strategized and kind of networked is I have a network of different people now, producers I know, different people that if a client came to me, I could put together a team and
Mm-hmm.
do that for them. But I would say in this season of life, I don't want to be doing that per se all the time. I think at a later season, maybe potentially. But again, I think I don't necessarily want to be managing, I would want other people to hire other people, a producer, to kind of manage that side of things.
So to paraphrase, let me see if I'm saying this correctly. You don't want to manage people. Like the whole managing others is the thing that you didn't want to do, or what about the production side did you not like?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I think that there's a couple things. I think first off, with where we're at, just kind of in the industry in general, it used to be a few years ago, if you had, really good work, right? Client facing, that clients would hire you no matter,
Mm-hmm.
What that client was, whether it was a local client or it was, a brand, or, there's a wide range of clients. But now I would say in 2022, there's been a huge shift because there's so many videographers out there. There's so many influencers. There's this, that, and whatever, that is just not the case anymore. You have to prove to that client that you're going to get them a certain ROI, I feel like. Or there's this shift that has happened where as a creative, you have to show them and prove to them the value of your work, like from an ROI perspective, which obviously
Okay.
makes sense as a client. But at the same time, it just puts a creative, especially a solo creative that's, not an agency, they're more of a production company, in a really weird position because, that's just not something that we can really do, right? We're here to creatively execute. We're not here to sell you a result. Obviously that is the goal, but I just would argue with anyone, and I know a lot of filmmakers who will make that sales pitch of like, I'm going to get you, this many views and this much ROI. I just don't think that is a genuinely honest thing that, people can do. So that was reason number one, is just dealing with clients and client acquisition and everything. That was an extreme challenge with running a production company. And I think
Okay, before you move to number two, let me do a follow-up question then. So
yeah.
how is that conversation different now that you're approaching it strictly as the cinematographer director role?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I will like answer that with a recent project that I just did. So I just worked with T Brand Studio, which is the New York Times, their internal brand studio that then they work with clients. So they were the agency, and then their client was Princess Cruises. So we had a crew of about 8 people, I think, give or take. And we went on this cruise for a week, and it was we shot this brand piece of this mother-daughter going on their cruise. And this is going to be, a paid advertising deal between T Brand Studio and Princess Cruises. So in that example, I'm not dealing with the client at all, right? That's the agency that's dealing with them. I'm getting paid to execute creatively. So I'm getting paid as a camera operator DP. And so they're the ones, T Brand Studio is the ones that are working with that client on all of that business side of advertising and everything else. And so, all the logistics are taken care of from a production side. You're not, having to sell to a client. You're just showing up as a cinematographer and getting, paid to shoot, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. So you mentioned ROI a couple of times, and that's kind of music to my ears. But what I find in the creative world and marketing specifically, and videography, oftentimes it's very difficult to prove ROI. It reminds me there was a videographer at the unconference that I was talking to, and it was essentially this conversation. But I said, the main problem I see is that people that are hiring to get videography done or marketing done, they do want an ROI. They do have an expectation. But oftentimes, it's especially with smaller organizations, they don't have a reasonable expectation or even a clear understanding. So, like an example was, well, if you're doing these services for Princess Cruise, vis-a-vis the agency, but like they have a very sophisticated understanding of their marketing. They understand what their cost of acquisition is and what the value of that customer is, right? If you're doing that with a small business owner, like some gear brand local there in Florida that's trying to get their product out there, they may not have a complete understanding of that or what their ROI should even be, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a real hard conversation to have with them when they don't know what they need.
Yeah.
Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just goes back to me, like with the production company, what I was finding is, yes, number one, people wouldn't know what they wanted. And again, it's like, I am not a marketing agency. I am a production company, right? So it is not my job, especially if you have an internal marketing person, to figure out what you need from a marketing strategy perspective. And that was the most frustrating thing for me as a creative video person, is having these people throw it back in your face and say, well, you tell us what we need. And I'm like, listen, I'm not being paid to know your company. Like, you should know what your company needs. Like, this is basic marketing. And so that was problem number one. And problem number two on the backside of things is you would make this beautiful video, right? That's very exquisite and whatever. And then they would have no understanding. Excuse me?
Bespoke. It was a bespoke video.
Yes,
no?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
But the distribution, they would have no idea of, just simple things like, release a teaser on social media and build up momentum. Like, they would just release the video and then you'd be like, okay, like, you need some strategy behind your distribution. And again, that was just not something that I wanted to take on as a production company that, again, is more suited to like a marketing agency.
Okay, so if I'm going to back up, okay, I just found a sock in my shirt. I don't know what that means. Um, sorry. Uh, the, I originally said you didn't want to manage people as the problem. That really wasn't the problem. It sounds like managing the client was the problem. Like, was that
Well, I would say it's twofold. I would say it's one, the client. That was my first point. And my second point when it comes to managing people, it wasn't so much managing people. Like I've managed people as a director and really enjoy that and working directly with like a subject and all that. It was more producing and production management that I did not like, where you're producing, you're handling all the logistics, and that's what I did not like.
Got it. Got it. All right. So now that you've pivoted here, what has that changed from the business side? So obviously, if you're doing business with a large agency, budgets, pricing are entirely different than if you're going direct to customer. And
Yeah.
so how has that affected the business side, that pivot?
Yeah, so I think my pricing strategy is definitely more straightforward because it's not, this lump sum of, the project, the editing, all the different things that go into producing a project from start to finish. Now it's just based on like a day rate and like, am I
Right.
bringing the drone? Am I bringing the underwater housing? So it's a little more straightforward, which is nice. I appreciate that because I honestly hate putting together proposals and
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not very good at it. So yeah, that would be one of the biggest things. I'm trying to think what else from a business perspective.
Well, has it been more successful doing the straightforward? I'm just doing this. Are you making more money than doing it where you had to manage all the elements?
I would say yes. I just made this transition, I would say in the past year, 6 months, even. I would say more like 6 months. It's very new. Um, it has taken me a year because I feel like the network that I was playing in for the production company has changed now with this new
Hmm.
model. And so a lot of my networking is not so much directly to clients. It is more people in the industry. It's agencies, it's other positions within
Hmm.
production, and those have been what's getting me the jobs now. And it's taken, I'd say, 6 months to a year of like sowing those seeds, networking. But I would say now, specifically already this year, December, January, I've seen it starting to really pay off and yes, make more money than, having a bottleneck doing everything myself, kind of.
Yeah, bottleneck is a great word. I'm curious. So, like agencies, traditionally have had a lot of talent like you in house.
Yeah.
Is that shifting where they're going more outside and getting and hiring that, as opposed to having the crew and the talent working for the agency?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's 50-50 kind of. Like, I know some friends of mine that work in house for an agency. Um, and then I think I haven't worked with as many agencies. I feel like I've worked more straight with like productions, you know what I mean? Like
Okay.
other production companies. So the advertising agency world is definitely an interesting world to play in. It's, I would say, heavily, um, there can definitely be in-house talent. And I feel like sometimes in Florida, the talent that they do bring in, there's like this um, kind of understanding that they're going to bring it in from LA, or like they're not going to
Mm,
hire. There's kind of like this conception amongst local creatives that get a little frustrated sometimes with the bigger agencies that they will bring in talent from LA, kind of. So there is some of that within like these big commercial marketing agencies.
Which do you prefer, working with production companies or agencies? Just personally.
Um, I think it just depends on the project, you know?
Fair enough. Fair
Yeah, I
enough.
would say it depends on the project. I would say I've had more experience working with other like productions. So yeah.
And you specialize a lot in, outdoor, underwater. Um, is that, I assume, what you're leading with, as far as like, this is the type of work that I do best, or is that why people are hiring you? Like, obviously, Princess Cruises, they're going to have a heavy element of that.
Yeah.
Um, is that what is attracting people to you? Is that specialization? Hey, listeners, are you ready to turn your passion into profit? Then grab a copy of Profit First for Creatives. Click the link in the show notes to purchase a copy. And if you're not ready to make that full commitment, you can download a free copy of the first chapter. Check it out right now.
I think it depends on the client. I know for me in the kind of work that I want to do, I've always leaned strongly into the outdoors. You know, being located in Florida here, incorporate underwater work and a lot of water lifestyle kind of into, my personal portfolio and brand and the projects that I've shot. And I would also say there's a nonprofit element too, like a telling people stories nonprofit element. So those two things are kind of the two target areas where I've seen some overlap in my career, which has been really incredible, where I've been able to kind of tell stories that touch on both. But then I've also, done projects that work one kind of realm, other kind of realm. When it comes to where I'm going, I think I would love to kind of be that female cinematographer that works with other females in the industry. I'm very passionate about that. But really is that kind of lifestyle, water, destination, Caribbean kind of feel. And so that's what I've kind of led with on my portfolio. And again, it's tricky because it's that age old question of like, how far do you niche down? And people have conflicting views on like, well, you've got to stay adaptable to get all different kinds of work. And that is true. And I do a lot of different kinds of work. I just don't always put it on my portfolio. But for those jobs like Princess Cruises, they told me, they were like, you were our first pick because your work screams like, that destination, the blue hues and all that sort of thing. So, you can argue on either side of that coin, I guess, as a creative of how far you niche down.
Yeah, my statement in general around business is that, and this has been my experience as well, is that there's an aversion to limiting the scope or your target market or niching, however you're defining that.
Yeah.
But because there's this inherent feeling like you're limiting yourself, like
Yeah.
if I can't do everything, that I'm going to limit my opportunities. But then I pivot to like John Morgan and Rival Studios, and like that's a success story of niching.
Totally.
But it's his my conversation with him on the podcast, it was like, well, that is a big enough market to niche to, right? Like,
Yep.
so you don't want to niche into something that doesn't have enough potential for you, right?
Totally.
And I think that's where people kind of get stuck, is they understand conceptually that if you're really good at one thing, people will hire you. You're the number one pick.
Yeah.
But is there enough work? Is there enough business to justify just that niche, right? And that's the balance you have to cast.
Exactly. No, I love that. I love the way that you describe that. I think it's very true.
Yeah, and I would think that what you do, there'd be plenty of work, because that seems to be, uh, a very popular type of content.
Hey creatives, Delana Ely here. I have a question for you. If you could pay yourself more, why aren't you doing it? For real. S Corp is an option for you, the creative entrepreneur, to move your business to the next level, to pay yourself more, and to cut your tax savings down. Yeah, less money to the IRS. We want that, right? So why haven't you done it yet? What's going on? The reality is you probably have 50,000 questions in your brain. You don't know which way is up and down, and you're still too busy to do all those things, plus also create, right? Well, the good thing for you is that Core Group is actually the place to be to get that S Corp election rolling. Yeah, we have an assessment. Let's see if you qualify. Come chat with me. Core Group, turning passion into profit.
I want to pivot to something you said, and then you and I discussed this in our conversation before the podcast about the female perspective.
Yes.
I think that's fascinating, because I agree with you that there definitely is I'll just say female energy that comes, that is distinct from a male energy. How have you navigated that without like saying I only work with females? Like, so how do you put yourself out there to show that is there without pissing off other people, for instance? I don't know if that's the right way to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just try to lead with my work, and I've had people, like clients, come to me. Two I can think of very specifically that were like, we want to work with a female, whether it's videographer or cinematographer, depending on the project. And so they've come to me because just who I am, I guess. And then, obviously they've seen my work aligns because, it's been in kind of the surf lifestyle, arena. So I try to just like not be so forward facing. Like, I'm not going to put on my website, I, only like to work with females or something. Like, I'm not going to do that. It's more just like overarching in what I shoot. And then also just networking, like I am in the process of trying to build a group of female cinematographers. And, it's like a community that, we can get on virtually via Zoom once a month. And I think that's one of the biggest things I do is just really, whether it's supporting on social media, it's networking, it's reaching out to other females in the industry. And, you never know, like they have a job if they're a female director and then they need you, that kind of thing is kind of the approach that I've taken, as opposed to being one of those super verbal people that's like, women this and women that, and, women first. Like, I guess I kind of try to take a bit of a softer approach. And it's not that I don't like working with guys. I do like working with guys, but I mean, I'll just be honest and say, like, there are definitely times where the stereotype still stands, where you get belittled and you get treated and mansplained. I mean, I've had plenty of those times happen, and it pisses me off. It's not right. So.
It is interesting because, and I guess probably in the creative world, this probably shows up more clearly, because I don't want to say more ambiguous, but like nobody gives a shit if their account is male or female, because the delivery, the deliverables on the surface are more measurable, right?
Yeah.
Like you did it on time, you did it right, you communicated whatever. But when you're dealing with a creative product, it's not as cut and dry as far as the results. But
Totally.
I think that it definitely shows up more the difference between masculine and feminine energy, because it's very different. So tell me about this cohort that you put together. What does that look like?
Well, I'm still in the process of creating it, but basically, it's really just a community that can meet virtually. This is my vision for it: is a community that can meet virtually of female cinematographers. They could be in documentary, commercial, narrative, whatever. As long as they're professional, they're this is their career, and my vision for it is really a place to network, to educate. I would love to bring in, female cinematographers that are like my heroes that I look up to, that inspire me, and have them, have a quick chat with the group and have an education piece. And then I would also really love, kind of a troubleshooting piece, because I think, in the industry, like, female DPs can get under a lot of scrutiny from their male counterparts. On the technical side, I think female DPs tend to be maybe slightly less technical. I don't know. That's kind of a stereotype. I know for me, I'm definitely less technical. I'm a lot more on the creative side, and I have to work very hard at the technical side. But, it's really kind of a place to troubleshoot, of like, hey, whether it's creatively in the actual craft of like, I'm having this problem, or even, on the business side of like, this is a business issue I'm having within my business of
Right.
being a cinematographer. And so that's really my heart and my vision, behind kind of, organizing this group and structuring it and everything. And I'm still in the early phases of that, working with two other, female cinematographers that I know. So.
Well, I love it. And I think that you're onto something. I mean, like the unconference really kind of confirmed for me about this need for community and creatives.
Totally.
And we screwed up last year. We tried to do a live event for creatives, and we invested a lot of money, committed a lot of money to it, and we didn't sell any tickets. And so we pivoted with that financial commitment, and later this month we have 10 of our clients coming in. Now this is what's fascinating to me, right? These 10 clients are coming in on their own dime. We're paying for the hotel, and we're feeding them and whatever. But the fact that they would commit their own money and their time to come to this really was like, there's this desire to connect with others. They're not coming here for us. We're just giving them the place to get together and network and communicate and collaborate.
Totally.
And so what I was telling Delana, my head of revenue, who was working with me on this creative revolution, was the live event. I'm like, we kind of went off on a tangent, but we ended up getting what we intended, which is this community element. And so I guess then my follow-up question to you is, have you considered monetizing it? Have you considered making it something that people pay for?
Is your podcast driving real results, or does it feel like a lot of effort with very little return? If you're a podcaster using your show to grow your business, then Podcasting Amplified is the podcast for you. You may have launched expecting listeners to flock in, but instead you're stuck on a handful of downloads while juggling recording, editing, promotion, and wondering what's missing. Well, Podcasting Amplified delivers no-fluff episodes packed with real-world tips and strategies on positioning, recording, growth, and turning your podcast into something that actually supports your goals. So search Podcasting Amplified on your favourite podcast app today and start building a podcast that gets results.
Yeah, I think that's down the road a bit. I think, I haven't considered that, but I think potentially, I think right now it's just we're just trying to get it rolling. Like right now we're trying to put, the founding meeting on the schedule and create a Facebook page, all that. So yeah, potentially. But I think that would be later on down the road.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is wise to just say, okay, is there interest, right?
Totally.
I think one of the, and I'm not mansplaining, I really am experience sharing here.
No, it's okay.
I think one of the reasons to consider monetizing it is people don't value what they don't pay for.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen this in my experience. Like we have, for instance, part of core service for our clients is we have monthly coaching calls, and they're via Zoom. And we've been doing it about 10 months. And what I found is there's a core group that come every time because they're like all in. They want to do it. And then there's another set that come every once in a while. And then there's a whole bunch of people that sign up that don't come.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's led me to believe that what I need to do is actually set up a separate delivery of this where they pay. Because if they don't pay, it's too easy to sign up. I'm not going to come this month, whatever. It's that commitment level. It's not really about making more money on our end. It's really of like, because Vincent, the unconference organizer, he was talking about that. He had a coaching of all these photographers, and he had a similar deal. And what he found was like 20% of the people were showing up.
Yeah.
And he was like, I feel like I'm not having enough impact because nobody's showing up. And so that's when he transitioned to this live conference, which is a paid event. You have to pay to come, and you have to be invited. So he sold out this event the first year, and now has a second year. And the idea that you have to, if you don't pay for something, you don't value it is unfortunately the psychology of humans.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I definitely will take that into consideration. I think that's a great point.
Well, you can give me a kickback if you want. I mean, that's totally fine. Pivot one more time. Talk about your marketing efforts now that you pivoted. And you said you had to change who you were marketing to.
Yeah.
What have you found effective?
Yeah, that is a great question.
I know, that's what I do is I ask great questions.
I think I've thought a lot about this because I've spent a year kind of really going hard on the marketing. So the first thing I will say is networking events. I am part of the AAF, which is a great organization. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called the American Advertising Federation. They have chapters all over the country. Orlando, near where I live, has a very active one. I have gotten on the film committee. They have different committees. Again, they're more in advertising, but that also includes, filmmakers and production. And so that was something that was recommended to me. I have done that and gotten, certain opportunities. It's just good to meet people. I'm also part of Women in Film and Television. That's another kind of organization that has local chapters. So, it has been, to a certain extent, some driving down south, to check out different chapters of these networking events. I have also joined a couple Facebook groups that have gig updates in production. There's like 3 or 4 of them I'm a part of. That is a great resource. That is how I got the cruise job. Crazy enough, it's this online female group called Media Mavens. They have like an email Google group and then a Facebook group. That is how I got that job. So I have found that to be effective. It's hit or miss. And then I think just the more that you're on set, like with other people, the more it becomes easier. Like, for example, the sound girl on this cruise, we all all of us crew just got along so well and had so much fun. So then, a few days after, she recommends me for this job, and then I get a Media Mavens request for a sound girl. So then I send her that. So it just kind of spiders out. So any opportunities that you can get on set, get on production, even for free, shooting BTS, you're going to meet people that then can lead to this opportunity that leads to that opportunity. And then I think the last thing that I've really been reflecting on that I feel like has paid off very well is if there's a certain person that you see as like a great opportunity, you want to work with them, or you see it, leading somewhere, invite them like to do something with you, like to invite them, get them work. And then that becomes like this really solid connection, because now you're established as like, hey, I've got my own work here. I'm bringing you on this project I'm going to be on. And that makes them feel good. And then, and then it just kind of grows from there, So I have found that to be very effective. Like, people want to be a part of like, someone who's doing things and, is open and wants to bring other people on. So.
Yeah, I think any marketing efforts that lead with value are incredibly effective. And what you just described, where you're like, hey, what are you looking for? How can I help you? Without asking for anything. And then you deliver it, I think is very powerful, because there's a little reciprocity there. Like, people feel like, well, I got to give something back because Makayla hooked me up, but it's not always that, level. But underneath there's like, well, I owe her something.
Yeah. Well, I think what I'm saying is like the principle that you're talking about, like, it applies on a very personal network, not just like it applies on a very personal one-to-one basis. And I think sometimes when you're starting out, you're looking for that hand up of that person that is like ahead of you and is willing to take a chance on you or invite you on. That's kind of the position that you take. And I think what I'm saying is making that subtle shift of, hey, I'm already someone that's getting jobs. I'm going to bring other people on and get them jobs. And then they kind of think, okay, Makayla's like, she's a working professional. She's this, she's that. And then, it kind of evens things out, I guess. You're seen on equal footing, not like, hey, I want to like, get this opportunity from you, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's sage advice. How do people find out more about your work?
Yeah. So my website is the best place. mgwpro.com kind of has all my work, a little more about me. And, you can connect with me on Instagram or LinkedIn as well.
Perfect. Listeners, will have those links in the show notes. If you like what you've heard, please rate the podcast, share the podcast, subscribe to the podcast. If you don't like what you've heard, shoot us a message and tell us what you'd like to hear, and we'll get rid of Makayla. Until next time, ta-ta for now.